Hey everybody, it is GleeCon here again with another episode of Lore of Warcraft. Last time we've kind of we're covering this range of a 3,000 year period from 12,000 to 15,000 years, or other way around, from the time we're raiding for, which is really when everything orcs and humans comes about, the opening of the Dark Portal. They mentioned that there was kind of a schism, that there was really so the dark trolls evolved into the night elves. And at the end of that last video I actually said there's a map of the dark trolls. That's actually way back when we were talking about the Zandalari and the Frostmane, or whatever, the Gurubashi, all the different troll tribes. There were these little pockets of dark troll tribes listed on that Troll Empire map. No real description. Well, it turns out that's a kind of a secretish nighttime race of trolls that slowly evolved into the night elves, and began worshipping Cenarius and Elune, and became nature focused, but they also really built their culture around the Well of Eternity, and a lot of arcane energy was coming out of the Well of Eternity. This this faction really one faction started pushing away from the nature, more into the arcane, and that was led by the great queen of the night elves, which was Queen Azshara, which is what we're going to read about now, and see how we know she becomes evil, and that there's all kinds of badness that happens. So maybe this is the beginning of that. Beautiful and wise beyond her years, Queen Azshara embodied the most coveted traits of her people. She indulged in sorcerous pursuits and constructed a breathtaking bejeweled palace on the shores of the Well of Eternity. There, the most powerful nobles, who became known as the Quel'Darai, or Highborn, answered to her every beck and call. I wonder if this is where the High Elves come from, the more blonde, different elves that we start to look at in maybe Orcs and Humans, but definitely in Warcraft 2. The Highborn were incredibly gifted and ambitious sorcerers. Some, such as Lady Vaj, served as the Queen's adoring and loyal handmaidens. Others, like Lord Xavius, were consulted by Azshara in matters of governance and acted as trusted advisors. But no matter what specific role these Highborn played at the Queen's side, all of them occupied the upper echelon of Night Elf society. They believed themselves to be superior to the rest of their race, a fact that drew the ire of the lower-born Night Elves. We also know that Lord Xavius, pretty sure he becomes a centaur, a satyr demon type. Of the evil satyr race, and Lady Vaj becomes the Naga. So already you can see how from the Night Elves, and therefore from the Trolls, spin off some of these other races, these evil races. But such contempt did not extend to Azshara. Although the Queen was born of the highest noble pedigree, Night Elves of every social standing adored her. The elves were so enamored with their queen that they renamed their wondrous capital Zin Azshari, or Zin Azshari, or the glory of Azshara, in her honor. Under Azshara, Night Elf civilization blossomed into a sprawling empire, a dreamscape of gilded spires, vast cities, and other marvels that would not be seen again even in the modern age. Networks of luminescent causeways, limned by the silver light of Elune, radiated out to the far corners of Kalimdor. You can see this in Sulamar some, I believe. At Azshara's behest, expeditionary forces set out to explore the world and also spread the Empire's borders. They often returned to Zin Azshara with samples of exotic flora and fauna, and tales of the mythical dragonflights that ruled the roof of the world. The expeditionary forces also founded dozens of outposts and repositories, such as Shandaral in the icy northern forest of Moonsong, Thenralor in the lush central wilds, later known as the Barrens, and Eldrethalas in the southern jungles of Feralis. The Queen herself oversaw the building of a wondrous new temple to Elune, a sprawling expanse of gem-encrusted bridges and effervescent lakes at the western edge of Kalimdor. Upon its completion, she named the mesmerizing grounds Lathar Lazal, or Seat of the Sky. I think this is where a lot of our Darkshore and obviously Feralis, why we have these different pockets of elven stuff around. Not since the Black Empire in ages past had a territory grown so vast in size and scope. The immense influence Azshara held over the world and its denizens eclipsed even Lei Shen's wildest dreams of power. There was, however, one location Azshara and her forces avoided, Mount Hyjal. The spirits and demigods who roamed the sylvan forests unsettled the queen. She knew in her bones that Hyjal was somehow beyond even her influence. It was a place steeped in ancient magic, a wild, untamable, and unchangeable land that stood in stark contrast to her vision of a new Kalimdor. Publicly, Azshara prohibited expansion into Hyjal out of respect for the Night Elves' ancient kinship with the forests. In truth, she despised the mountain and the harmony it represented. Which makes me think about, I wonder if there's a tie here. When you first started Warcraft back in the day, the first couple, 2, 3 expansions, there was always a Mount Hyjal spot on the map that was never open. Interesting that she despised it from the beginning. Azshara's views on Hyjal were well known to Cenarius. With growing unease, he had watched the Night Elf Empire expand. Year by year, he became increasingly frustrated with the hubris and thoughtless actions of the sorceress Highborn. The majority of Night Elf society continued honoring the old ways of revering the wilds. The fact that these folk still lived in harmony with the land warmed Cenarius' heart, but he knew that they had no influence over Azshara and her arrogant followers. As time passed, the Night Elves began eschewing diplomacy and largely ignored Azeroth's other cultures. Azshara's dogmatic beliefs regarding racial purity seeped into the Night Elves' psyche, creating an atmosphere rife with xenophobia. Only the openly hostile troll nations drew the full attention of the elves. Small sporadic battles ignited between the two sides. On every occasion, the trolls buckled before the devastating magics wielded by the Night Elves. Azshara, however, was not interested in conquest. In her eyes, the trolls were a minor nuisance, their battle lust a symptom of primitive and unenlightened minds. Ultimately, the queen struck an accord with the Zandalari tribe, which held immense influence over all other trolls. In exchange for ending troll incursions into Night Elf territory, the Zandalari would be allowed by Azshara's grace to keep the sacred Zandalari Mountains south of the Well of Eternity. The trolls begrudgingly agreed, fully aware that they stood no chance against their enemies' arcane powers. This shameful acquiescence fostered the trolls' deep resentment toward Night Elves, a bitter hatred that would carry on for generations to come. With the trolls no longer a threat, Azshara continued expanding her dominion. Yet even as she did so, she spent more time in the confines of her palace obsessing over the Well of Eternity and the arcane secrets held within it. She believed that the Night Elves had thus far only tapped a small portion of the Fountain's power. She pushed the Highborn to plumb the Well of Eternity's depth, to expand their knowledge and reach for new heights of cultural and technological advancement. Their reckless experiments sent torrents of magic crashing through the twisting nether. Like moths to the flame, the nether's demonic inhabitants were drawn toward the irresistible source of power, which you see play out in Battle for Azeroth. In the Najatar or whatever it is, I can't remember, but where you see the old ones working with Queen Azshara, and how that culminates. That's like the finale of that expansion. It was only a matter of time before Sargeras and the Burning Legion also took notice. You see that in the Legion expansion. At long last, Sargeras had discovered the location of Azeroth, the fabled world soul. Without delay, he gathered all of his rage, all of his terrible demonic legions, and turned his baleful gaze upon the distant world. All that remained was for Sargeras to find a way to reach Azeroth. Oh, so in her hubris, not only is bad things going to happen, and which could happen on their own, but because her messing around with the Well of Eternity has touched the twisting nether, now that energy has drew the attention of the Burning Legion, and that's what's going to bring it eventually to Azeroth. So she's actually a big, like, I didn't realize that she was just so central in the complete screwing up of the world. Here you have the Night Elf Empire and how it is spread across the still Pangea. You have the Well of Eternity in the middle with the Palace Zandalari. I want to say that. Oh, there's Suramar, if you look to the right. Okay, so Suramar is just a nearby kingdom. Zuldazar is where she has allowed them to keep it. Mugushon Vault and Vale of Eternal Blossoms, Mantibes. That's still attached. Okay, so you have on the outskirts, unattached in her empire, are Uldaman, Zul'Grub, Uldum, Zul'Farrak, Ankaraj. So you have a lot of troll empires, Zulaman. So really the world, and in their empire you have Eldrith Alas, Lathar Lazel, Mount Hyjal, then Rolor, or Rolori, Asdrul Nirab at the top, Ulduar, Shandoral, Gundrak. Okay, so it looks like in the ancient time, the Night Elf Empire is the majority, with the trolls, most of everything that's not controlled by them. Little pockets of Titan, Keeper, and like Ulduar, Uldum, a little bit of the Silithid type of evil people, Encourage, still left. And you have the Mogu controlling what is Pandaria in the south. So, interesting. That's actually kind of cool to see the historic ways, all before the other races have really started to touch anything. All right, guys, interesting stuff. You know it's about to get bad, but we're also continuing to just push on forward until we get to the cool stuff, cooler stuff. Thanks, as always, for listening. It was a pleasure. Hope you learned some. I feel like I did. And I'll see you on the next episode of Lore of Warcraft. See ya.